Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. For 18 months, senators in this place have been coming to ask those opposite for the most basic of information on the NDIS. And I heartily endorse Senator Steele-John's comments that this government has shamefully not only have a complete lack of transparency, but they have basically given a one-fingered or two-fingered salute to senators and to over 650,000 Australians now on the NDIS. Apart from the colossal failure of those opposite to actually deal with the problems, we've heard time and time again in this place Bill Shorten, when he was approached by me as minister, to say we've got some serious structural issues with the NDIS we need to fix. We actually need to be able to control both drivers of cost, the amount of people on the scheme and also the average cost per participant on the scheme. Bill Shorten said there's nothing wrong with the scheme, you're just making it all up. Comes into government, oh dear, I never read the budget papers, I never read any of the reports from the NDIS, and the scheme is in trouble. And instead of actually saying, oops, we got it wrong, he just doubled down. He had another review that was completely unnecessary. He said, well, we can't really do anything until after the review's finished, 18 months later. Well, we're not going to make any cuts to the scheme. Well, that was just a big, fat untruth. They have been, and I'll go through the numbers in a second, they have been cutting like there is no tomorrow on this scheme indiscriminately. But what we haven't really heard, and Senator Hughes just touched on it, is that foundational supports, as they're now called, were what was called Tier 2 supports when the Commonwealth Government went into interim intergovernmental agreements with states and territories. The states and territories were always responsible for community-based supports for those who were not going to be eligible for the NDIS. Because don't forget, this was a scheme for Australians who had the most serious and permanent disabilities, those Australians who lived miserable, horrible lives in state and territory facilities, who were denied the most basic of human respect and dignity. But those opposite have now just got a strategy to get them through the next election. No wonder Bill Shorten scarpered off before the election and before his financial fraud was exposed.
Minister.
I'd ask Senator Reynolds to reflect on the way she just characterised the former member for Maribyrnong.
Just reflect on it. I don't think it was an adverse reflection, but be measured in
by his name. So the former Minister Shorten, then, if I say the former Minister Shorten.
It was the scampering away, but I don't think that was what you were suggesting. It's not a debate.
If I may, the additional concern, Senator Reynolds is persistently referring to Mr Shorten incorrectly. He should be referred to as Mr Shorten, notwithstanding the fact that he's no longer serving.
Please take that on board, Senator Reynolds.
Former Minister Shorten, who has left prematurely and left every single NDIS participant, their families, with an almighty mess, which is impacting on their lives in the most profound of ways. But the biggest of so many things, the mess that he has left behind, which Labor are now scrambling to try and make sure doesn't come out before the election. But they've cut $60 billion out of the scheme. They've forced tens of thousands of participants through reviews. They've delayed plans. They're still hiding budget figures. They commissioned Redbridge and spent an enormous amount of money on how to spin this through. But let's have a look at what they're actually hiding. Total payments continue to increase, both due to increased participant numbers and higher average cost participants. So the two drivers of cost, despite everything they say, this mythical 8%, which is what is in the budget. So Senator Hughes last week was talking about an $11 billion black hole. Well, I tell you what, when you have a look at the NDIS figures and the fiction of the figures, It is far more than that. So this is the fact. Total payments continue to increase, as I said, by both the cost drivers. And in the first quarter, it was $11.5 billion of expenditure. This total payment level is actually on track to exceed last year's expenditure on the NDIS, which has not been budgeted for in this year's budget. So now the government are desperately talking to states and territories, can you give us a loan, so that while we're still spending 2.5 years and there is no agreement with states and territories on foundational sports. Why would they? They vacated the field, as Senator Steele-John has said, for nearly a decade, and they are not just going to not only not find the money, but it's already a thin provider market. Where are these people going to come from? Planned inflation also continues to rise, with the annualised inflation level at 12.8, not their mythical 8%. This is a fraud on people with disability and on all Australian taxpayers. Thank you, Deputy.